What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some Cronos The New Dawn. And today I'm going to be giving you guys my short review on whether I like this game or not, and do I ultimately recommend this game to you or not. This is the latest survival horror game from the Bloober Team, and after their success with Silent Hill 2 Remake last year, I definitely had to give this one a try. So I'm going to be going through the things I liked, as well as the things I didn't like, and ultimately give it a conclusion whether this is something I give it a buy or maybe wait for a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get right into this. In terms of the things I liked, I absolutely enjoyed the combat and whole progression of it as you progress through the game with it. It is definitely a true survival horror game in terms of it is very rough, and so many times you'll be barely scraping by wondering if I'm going to make it out of here alive. This game definitely will have some moments where you feel like there is no way you can get through moments of this game, but this game eventually teaches you that you have to understand that you, a lot of times, in most situations, do not have the amount of ammunition as well as resources to take out all the enemies. So you have to prioritize planning ahead of the game as well as taking out maybe multiple enemies in one blow. Not just in terms of blowing up gas canisters, but in terms of burning the bodies. And of course, the big concept, do not let them merge. If Dead Space's motto was cut off their limbs, this game's motto is do not let them merge. Because the enemies, when they start merging, it'll turn a winnable battle into a difficult battle into maybe possibly an impossible battle to win. Because there's a lot of variations of the merging, and there's no limit to how much they merge. And they can definitely put you in a very bad scope. I also enjoy a lot of the boss fights. I think they're pretty cool and straightforward, but not to the point where you can't figure them out and enjoy them. Even though the final boss fight does have its moments, I do enjoy the whole concept of the boss fights. But getting back with the combat, the weapons are very satisfying. But as I said, you don't have a lot of resources as well as inventory space. This feels like more of those older school survival horror games where even before you can upgrade to the max, you get 12 spaces at most. And trust me, they'll fill up real quickly. But when you don't have the materials to rebuild your ammunition or health, you definitely will be in spots many times in this game where you're just struggling to survive. And that's where you have to learn to conserve as well as just plan ahead. And I think that's the biggest thing I learned while replaying this game multiple times is that sometimes it's in your best interest just to run and avoid it altogether. And you might take a little damage sometimes, but at the end of the day, sometimes having that ammunition is a lot more important because when you run out and you can't craft anymore, good luck with that melee, because it's definitely not the Dead Space melee by any chance of the imagination. But getting back to the merging, yeah, it's really frustrating at times when you have multiple enemies on the screen and you have that guy in the background that constantly keeps merging, making the enemies more powerful, and they can take a lot of hits. And that's one thing I do like about this game is it's a lot of trial and error. You know, there's a lot of moments when I first played through it, I struggled, and you know that's a good thing in survival horror games, is struggling, because that's kind of what you want. It's half the fun. But as you learn the whole patterns, you start to plan out better. But you have to take that little struggling hour first before you learn how to avoid it altogether. And definitely on replay playthroughs, it definitely got a lot more easier as I was able to plan. But that's the fun part of the combat, is you'll be seeing people and you just plan for it ahead of time, like in terms of using maybe your mines as well as using your flaming to burn up the bodies. Maybe you keep all the bodies in a similar area, so you make a mental head note of where they are so you can know where everything is so they're not merging behind your back. So it's definitely something that increases a level of urgency that you got to pay attention for. And of course, the combat wouldn't be complete without the weapons, and I definitely did enjoy the weapons. You not only have your normal weapons, you also have variants of it as well as you find throughout the game. You have the ability to upgrade them to do more damage, have a bigger clip, and stuff like that can go a long way with items you find to increase that, whether it's increased by urns as well as increased by money, and you can increase the suit's efficiency as well. So it's your typical survival horror game that's kind of similar with other things, kind of like Dead Space, but nonetheless, my personal favorite weapons were the first pistol you had as well as the single shot shotgun, and I like using the charge shots with them a lot. They got me through the game pretty well, and I also like the last really heavy damage, I guess, rocket launcher type weapon in the game. That definitely is something that can get you out of a jam in a while, but overall they definitely were fun to use, and it makes the combat whole cycle really enjoyable and satisfying, and I definitely liked it a lot. It's also fun to point out that you can establish connection with other fallen travelers and that you can actually get the essences that they had and put it on yours. Keep in mind, though, that you can only hold 3 at once, and what these do is they can actually give you some effects that can help you out in combat. So it's also kind of a little bit of like strategy and a way of knowing which ones are more important. Because when you get rid of an essence, you get rid of it forever. You can't get it back. So you kind of got to make a move and figure out which one is more important and which one's got to stay and which one's going to go. And remember, you can only hold 3 at once. So it is a critical decision that you ultimately have to make. There are little effects, but they are there just to help you out in the end. And I do like having those options as well. You also have a lot of collectibles you can collect, like finding cats. That's right, you can find cats and they actually give you items that can help you out, as well as they go back to one of your main rooms. You have other things like logs and comic books you can find, but collecting cats is always a win in my book. And last thing I really like about this game is just the whole world, not just the environment, whether you go in the past or the present, but also just the whole lore around the whole situation revolving Cronos. I think it's very interesting, and I was really invested in what was going on and what was ultimately happening. But unfortunately, as interesting as the lore is, it is a double-edged sword, because now I get to the things I ultimately didn't like. I think the first thing is not necessarily the story, but the characters driving the story. They're not very interesting. Your main character is kind of just there. I guess you can just call them kind of like a space cadet in a way, but they really don't have too much of a personality, and it's only until the end of the game that you really start to understand and learn about them. But unfortunately, the game ends way too quickly. You have a few characters that you see, a few recurring ones, but most of them only appear in that one scene or moment in the story before they go away. And the ones that do, they kind of just don't give you enough to make you really that invested. Like, you have kind of maybe 2 or 3 overall that get interesting around the end parts of the game, but unfortunately, by the time you get to that point, the game unfortunately ends. So I feel like that's the biggest thing from the story part holding this game back, is that the characters in the story aren't as interesting as the world and everything around it. And that's unfortunate, because I do like the whole world of Cronos. I do like a lot of the lore and world building of it. But I just wish the characters were a lot more interesting, as a lot of them are really generic and just don't do anything enough to make you want to go, they were really interesting, you want to see more of them. And I think another big complaint is just a lack of a map. Because it's not that it's hard to traverse in this game, it's just that you'll go through parts that maybe you didn't necessarily see or you couldn't get to at that point in time. But because of there's no map, you kind of forget about it. So I wish this game had a map. It's kind of a little downfall there. And I wish there was a few more puzzles, just because, you know, it is a survival horror game. So, how do I feel about this game? Ultimately, I did enjoy this a lot. There's a lot more positives than negatives. If you are a fan of survival horror games, I definitely do recommend this game. I think there's a lot more elements in here. You obviously have things after you beat it with New Game Plus to unlock, to further upgrade your weapons, as well as maybe retrace your steps and find things you missed out. There's more pluses than negatives here. If you are not a big survival horror fan, maybe wait for a sale. But if you are a horror fan, I definitely recommend this. I think this is an excellent addition to the survival horror genre, and ultimately gets my thumbs up for it. But that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. What did you ultimately think about this game if you did play it? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.